What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Fear is a primal instinct of mankind. It thrives in the back of our mind as we are alone at home, lying in the dark. It is no wonder mankind is so fascinated with the supernatural, as it seems to be an integral part of our psyche. And due to this, we have a vast number of horror movies since the beginning of cinema till today. It is no secret that horror as a genre has strong roots in fiction and makes millions in the box office. But like any genre that has existed as long as horror has, there's definitely going to be a steady decline in quality. Nowadays we find many modern horror films that heavily rely on jump scares, loud noises, and unnecessary amounts of plot twists without any true motivation. However, with movies like Hereditary, The Witch, and Oculus, there does seem to be a slight resurgence in proper horror films that work more on a psychological aspect, true horror that lingers with you far after the film is over. Many would wonder, as I have myself, what makes a great horror film. To figure this out, I delved into the godfather of modern horror films. The one film that everyone has been trying to replicate since it first came out in 1973. The only horror film to have actually traumatized me. That film is The Exorcist. William Friedkin's film, adapted from the excellent horror novel by William Peter Blatty, is a masterclass in horror. There are several key elements that help build fear, and we're going to take a look at them. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft. Modern horror relies too much on explaining everything to the audience. There will always be a scene that simply dumps exposition on the audience of who or what the entity is, and why it is tormenting the victim, as well as the weakness of said entity. This sense of wanting the audience to understand everything may work for world building, but ultimately detracts the horror that the audience feels, as they now know too much of the demon, or the killer, or the evil spirit, which is why horror sequels rarely work, as by the second time around you already know too much of the entity in question. The Exorcist villain is clearly a demon, but throughout the film, even the name of said demon is never mentioned. It isn't until the horrible sequel to The Exorcist do we learn that the demon's name is Pazuzu, an ancient demon of Sumerian origin. However, in The Exorcist itself, save for the opening archaeological dig scene in Iraq, there is no overt reference to the origin of the demon or what it wants. Father Karras even believes at first that there are multiple identities, but Father Merrin, who has his own backstory shrouded in mystery, knows that it is only one. We as the audience aren't given any more to grasp on about the entity other than the fact that it is powerful, intelligent, and has a penchant for disgusting remarks that hit at your inner fears.
You know what she did? Your canting daughter?
The opening dig scene perfectly illustrates the ancient feel of the evil, as it is seen in the desert with a foreshadowing tone that leaves you with more questions than answers. This is ideal for creating a sense of unease in the audience. There is no point in the story whereby Father Merrin, the demon expert archetype, stops the plot just to dump exposition on us and the characters as to the nature of the demon. He simply warns Karras to not listen to it, as it will mix the truth with the lies to deceive you. vague enough to help you understand the basics, but not detailed enough to know everything. Fear of the unknown. The world of The Exorcist is filled with regular people. They're not in any way the vapid caricatures that we would see in modern horror films, but are folks that you and I have either seen before, talked to before, or have even been ourselves at some point. The story first focuses on actress Chris McNeil, who's trying her best to be a single mother and take care of her daughter Reagan after a split between her and her husband. She tries her best, but the demands of her career simply dictate that she can't spend as much time as she wants with Reagan. Now on to Reagan herself. Being the eventual possessed girl, she is shown at first to be a lively and bubbly young 12-year-old who is very creative with her art and sculptures. So when she tells her mother that she has an imaginary friend named Captain Howdy, her mother, and we as the audience, think it is nothing serious. But this is a horror film after all. Damien Karras, who's very much the hero of this film, is a priest who has a crisis of faith, something a lot of modern horror films are simply trying to copy at this point. He's the perfect representation of humanity, as even though he's a priest, he smokes and visits the pub. He's a boxer and an athlete of sorts, a far cry from the pious and saintly Father Merrin. He's trying to take care of his mother, who's mentally ill. However, he opts to leave her at an asylum of sorts, and she dies. Her death haunts Karras and is what makes him doubt his faith in God, and to a certain extent himself. Karras is ultimately as human as any of us. His priestly garb changes nothing, and he knows that. These characters then go through such changes throughout the film that challenges their morals, beliefs, and pushes them to the limit.
Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself. Now, if you've seen as many psychotics as I have, you'd realize that's the same thing as saying you're Napoleon Bonaparte. You asked me what I think is best for your daughter. 6 months under observation in the best hospital you can find.
You showed me Reagan's double. Same face, same voice, everything. And I'd know it wasn't Reagan. I'd know in my gut. I'm telling you that that thing upstairs isn't my daughter. Now, I want you to tell me that you know for a fact that there's nothing wrong with my daughter except in her mind. You tell me you know for a fact that an exorcism wouldn't do any good. You tell me that!
The once proud actress becomes a grieving mother who wants to save a daughter. The young innocent girl becomes a demonic hellspawn with a ruined, mangled appearance, and the priest who does not believe has to take on ultimate evil. At the end of the day, these are people, so we feel for them and fear for them. The horror of The Exorcist takes its time. It doesn't simply shove the audience into the scares, but rather takes time to build to it. From noises in the attic to Reagan acting strange and moody to full-blown poltergeist activity. The aspect of the medical examinations was a brilliant addition, as it adds a nice even layer of skepticism towards the whole demonic possession issue, as the doctors put Reagan through numerous medications and operations only to see her grow worse in condition. And even after the arrival of Father Karras, we still are investigating possibilities of mental illness. It isn't until a good chunk of the film has passed that we truly accept the supernatural nature of Reagan's affliction. The slow descent helps the audience guess along the way, the audience begins to question themselves as to what is real and what is not. The slow rising of the paranormal activities also keeps the audience on their toes, with a sense of anticipation as they do not know what will happen next. Instead of empty jump scares, the film prioritizes the slow anticipation of the inevitable horror that is shrouded by the characters themselves doubting whatever is going on. Again, the fear of the unknown works wonders here. The villain of a horror film, the titular monster or killer, has to be a credible threat. There has to be a major effect or a looming danger that should instill fear in the hearts of the audience. The demon in The Exorcist is extremely vile and deadly, as it is shown to have no remorse and violently mutilates and tortures a young girl. It is extremely powerful, shown to have powers of telekinesis and immense strength, but moreover, the power of the demon is its ability to get inside your head and hurt you where you least expect it. It can mimic voices of loved ones, and it can hone in on your personal fears and doubts. This sense of an evil that is unknown, ancient, and seemingly all-knowing can truly add to the fear that we feel. Throughout the entire exorcism, there is never a time the demon is shown to be weakened per se. It openly blasphemes and insults the priest and God. The horror and the inability of the priest to save the girl swell in the back of your head as you see the exorcism not go as expected. In the end, it takes a sacrifice to save the life of Reagan. In conclusion, the true depth of horror can only be reached by understanding that these forces are not things that go bump in the night. They are not boogeymen that are told in neat little stories, and the person who faces these terrors are actual people. They are every bit as human as you and I. In their heart, horror movies are dramas about people. People who have to face unspeakable terrors with a diminishing sense of hope. Remember that. And until then, let my cry come unto thee.
Why this girl? It makes no sense.
I think that the point is to make us despair. To see ourselves as animal and ugly. To reject the possibility that God could love us.